Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Pitch Talk.
We are fans of football dropping vlogs, videos and podcasts on the beautiful game.
Check out our videos on YouTube and Instagram's IGTV,
including special feature segments,
5 minutes with the G,
the Straight Shootin View,
coaching with JBK. We produce, record and edit video content
and audio on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts,
Verbal, Podomatic,
Anchor,
Spotify
and other podcast platforms.
Join the Pitch Talk revolution on Twitter, Instagram,
Facebook
and www.pitch-talk.com.
The pitch is where we eat.
The pitch is where we sleep.
And the pitch is where we talk.
I can see you now. I can see you now and then. I can see you now.
The Straight Shootin View.
Hey everybody, what is up? My name is Straight Shootin LJA and welcome to another episode of the Straight Shootin View. Now, some interesting news has come up recently with the news that Manchester City are being, once again, I might add, investigated because of basically FFP, financial fair play, shall we say irregularities, inconsistencies. Basically, Manchester City have been charged with, I think it's 115 breaches of financial fair play over a 9-year period. Now, this obviously is unprecedented in English football, and it's the Premier League who have charged them with it. So that's where it's interesting. It's not UEFA, as we saw, a couple of years ago, when their squad was reduced in 2020, where they were sanctioned by UEFA, and then the Court of Arbitration for Sport actually overturned it. More on that later. But also remember in 2014, they had their squad reduced from 25 to 21 in the Champions League by UEFA for financial fair play breaches. So Manchester City have a long, rich tradition of trying to fiddle financial fair play and fiddle numbers. So where we are now is that at the moment, as said, Manchester City have been charged with 115 breaches of financial fair play. And as said, there are a number of punishments, like ranging from points deductions to being thrown out of the Premier League, and some are even suggesting relegation and that kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, what is the most likely course of action to happen? Probably a fine, which will be a slap on the wrist at best. So it is one of them where there's a lot of speculation about what could happen. Suffice to say, this will not be resolved quickly. This is going to rumble on for a long time. And the independent panel that will be presiding over this case, well, there's an interesting makeup, because apparently one of them is an Arsenal supporter, but I don't think that's going to have any sort of bearing at all. But there has to be a financial expert on that board. That's one of the major stipulations. And it's like, okay, fair enough. But one of the more interesting things that's come up out of this, and that was confirmed afterwards, is that Manchester City apparently are going to spend as much money defending their case as they did buying Kevin De Bruyne, which, yeah, is just hilariously ironic considering how central Kevin De Bruyne has been to Manchester City's success recently. So, yeah. But it is one of them ones where, as I said, this is unprecedented in English football. And you've already got guys like Javier Tebas and also the other Javier talking about financial doping with the Premier League and all that. Pot kettle black. I'm not going to go into Javier Tebas and people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I'm not going to go into Javier Tebas again, if you'll pardon my phrasing, because I've already done 2 Straight Shootin View episodes discussing Javier Tebas and his hypocrisy, shooting his mouth off about Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester City financial doping when he's an out loud and proud Real Madrid supporter running La Liga. So I'll leave that aside. But One of the sanctions that's probably the most interesting that people have been speculating is having championship titles stripped. And I think that really and truly, the only punishment that would fit the crime of 115 FFP breaches is stripping titles. Because those breaches, you could obviously trace them back and have a paper trail. Some are linked to the brief kind of news that's out there is that one is related to a payment to Yaya Touré's agent, one is related to a payment to Roberto Mancini, and obviously there's a number of others to do with buying players and stuff. And just like Paris Saint-Germain, who also got in trouble with UEFA, but that got dismissed last year, 2022, as nothing. Inflating sponsorships. Now, for me, inflating sponsorships is cheating. It's out and out cheating because it's making you look like you're making money that you're not making. So, and financial fair play was supposed to be all about living within your means. But if you're inflating what your means are, then you're cheating because you're defrauding the system. So there's also that aspect of it as well, where there's essentially financial fraud going on by Manchester City. So the potential sanctions in terms of stuff like relegation and that kind of thing, there are some similarities with what's happening in Italy with Juventus, but I'm going to take another straight shooting view with that one because the Juventus thing, I think they've been deducted 15 points because of basically irregularities to do with transfers. But I might take another completely separate straight shooting view to discuss that one because that is interesting because the Juventus situation, you had the whole board resign when it was announced that they were being investigated. So I said Pavel Nedved, Allegri, as well. So as well. So it's one of them was their chairman went, Pavel Nedved went, and their chairman, remember, was one of them ones who was a massive proponent of the Super League. So it all kind of ties in. But the Juventus one, I'll probably do another straight shooting view episode on. But Manchester City, they wanted to be a part of the Super League, if you'll remember. So them wanting to be part of the Super League is interesting because it's a case of, oh, wait, hold on, they might have seen this coming and been like, oh, well, we might get stuck with financial fair play if we do this. Oh, we better join the Super League for protection. Almost making the Super League seem like a kind of mafia protection racket. But it is one of them ones where obviously a European Super League, it would be kind of the wild, wild west, where you wouldn't have to adhere to UEFA and their rules because you make your own. So Manchester City would be fine, and teams like that. Paris Saint-Germain would be fine because nobody's making the rules. Or in the words of Shawn Michaels when he was part of D-Generation X, right, forming that group, you make the rules, we will break them. Yeah. So that's where that becomes interesting. But as I said, in terms of potential sanctions, yeah, I think stripping of titles and a points deduction, that's the only really fair way to do this. And in terms of stripping titles, some people have said, oh, then the title should be awarded to those who play second. And as a Liverpool supporter, obviously we would benefit from that because we'd be awarded 2 titles. 13-14 and 19-20. Sorry, 18-19. We'd be awarded those 2 titles because we missed out by 2 points and 1 point respectively. But I, for one, I think that Manchester City, if found guilty of those breaches, should be stripped of titles. But the one thing I don't believe is that titles should be awarded. Matches being replayed, that's not really possible as a sanction to me, because it's one of them was you'll have Man City getting sanctioned for something that happened 8 years ago, but replaying the match 8 years later when they've had the opportunity to spend 700-800 million, because you're not going to tell them to dismantle their squad and balance their books. So yeah, that just doesn't even make sense. Replaying matches doesn't make any sense to me. But awarding of titles, I don't agree with. I really don't, because I think that really diminishes the competitiveness of the sport. Almost as much as Manchester City cheating, in theory, to win those titles in the first place. Because then it's like, there will always be that asterisk. And us and Manchester United, I think Manchester United would be awarded like 3 titles, we'd be awarded 2. But it's one of them where it's like, do you really want to win a title like that? Me personally, no. I wouldn't. I mean, Lucas Leiva said, oh, am I a Premier League winner now? And it's like, okay, he's asking that tongue-in-cheek, clearly. But if you're a professional worth your salt, you would want to earn it. You wouldn't want it handed to you on a silver platter. So it's one of them where it's just like, it is a really, really strange one. And I said, I'd strip those titles. And I'd probably put not a 15-point one like Juventus, because there are so many breaches. 115. We're not talking like 5 or 10. We're talking triple digits here. Because there are so many breaches, to me, that says that Manchester City have taken the absolute mickey out of the system. There's another word I'd like to use, but I'm not going to swear. And it's one of them was, okay, and I would look at it as, if I'm the powers that be in the Premier League, all right, you're going to take the mickey out of our system, we're going to take the mickey out of you. 30-point deduction at the start of the season. Let's see how you go from there. Or do a 15-point deduction for, say, 2 to 3 seasons. That would be one of them ones, because then it's like, you know what? You guys had an unfair advantage for a few seasons. We're going to give you a disadvantage for a few seasons. So, for me, I would be looking at pushing for, say, a 15-point deduction at the start of the next 3 seasons. So, all told, that will be 45 points as a deduction. And I said, let them start at a deficit. Because if they're inflating their sponsorships, if they're fiddling their numbers, if they're spending more than anyone else and not adhering to the rules, then you're cheating. You're giving yourselves an unfair advantage. So here's your disadvantage. That's where I'd go with it. And I'd strip those titles. I'd strip those titles in each one of those seasons where there's breaches. Because otherwise you're mocking. And I said I wouldn't want to award those titles, because there will always be the asterisk of, oh, well, this title went to this person retrospectively because of this. No, I think that hurts the integrity of the sport, to be perfectly honest. But then if you start Manchester City for, say, 3 seasons minus 15, it's one of them ones where it's like, okay, and put sanctions on them as well, like, say, a fine where you can only spend this much, then cool. Because then it redresses the balance. It does go to some extent to redressing the balance. Will the Premier League have the balls to do it? I do not think so. And by the way, Vincent Kompany, he's doing well with Burnley, and props to him. But for him to come out and say, I question the motives of Man City's critics. Yeah, you might want to point the guns inwards and question the motives of your owners. Of the owners of the club that you used to play for and you won your Premier League titles under. You might want to start questioning them, because they may have put you in a position where you could get stripped of your titles. So why don't you question that instead of trying to manipulate PR and be like, oh no, City shouldn't be questioned. Those questioning City should be questioned. Nah. Not the way this works, mate. Not the way this works. So I find it interesting as well, though, that with the lawyer situation, Manchester City came out and made a statement and said, yeah, we're surprised by this. What are you talking about? We're going to fight this to the fullest. Okay, cool. Fight it to the fullest all you want. But it doesn't look good in terms of optics when you are going to spend as much as you paid for Kevin De Bruyne for legal fees. That just doesn't look good. That looks like, so you ain't that sure after all then. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what shakes out. This is not going to be over anytime soon. This is going to go for months, maybe even years. So any punishment will end up being majorly retrospective. So it's one of them where I said, you'd rather sides win stuff on merit. Like, look at Arsenal this season and how well they're doing in spite of Manchester City being there. Look at how well they're doing. Imagine a sanction was to come out this season. If miraculously it was to come out this season and Arsenal were just awarded the title. All that hard work, props to him, props to Arteta. All the hard work him and that Arsenal side have done, there would always be an asterisk around that title win. There would always be. And it would be sad if that was to be taken away from them, if they were to win it. Because you'd want to be the best. Like when Liverpool, we won our league title. Nobody could dispute that. We were 25 points clear before the COVID stoppage. Oh, you only won the title because of COVID. You got to be an idiot to think that. Because we were 25 points clear before that 4-month stoppage. We had to win 3 more games and that was it. So, yeah, it was already a done deal. So, it is one of them ones where, yeah, I said, this thing with Manchester City and the financial fair play breaches is going to be interesting. I said, for a number of reasons. But it's going to be an interesting situation to keep an eye on. Because I said, this is going to rumble for months. And I think Manchester City, to show that the Premier League has a backbone and to show that they're not going to allow this to happen again and again and again, the Premier League have to make an example of Manchester City and throw the book at them. Strip them of the titles, 15-point deduction for each of the next 3 seasons after that decision is made, and you will quickly see teams fall in line and be like, okay, hold on. Because you've also got Chelsea fiddling financial fair play as well by amortizing their deals. So it's one of them ones where it's like, okay, business-wise, it's smart what Chelsea have done. But as said on the previous episode of the Straight Shootin View, far from ethical. It's like spreading them deals out over 8 years clearly shows you haven't actually got the money for those purchases. It's like buying something on finance. You haven't got the money to buy it up front, so you spread the cost. So you would deter teams from doing that. And you would deter teams from making a mockery of financial fair play. And I've always said this. Remember, to me, Michel Platini, the man who came up with financial fair play in the first place, is the man who's done more damage to it than anybody else when he came out under no pressure at all and said, oh, well, we're not looking to kick teams out of the Champions League for FFP breaches. And it's like, you moron. You've just given away your biggest bargaining chip. Idiot. So hopefully the Premier League learned from UEFA's mistakes. Obviously, Manchester City will have the right to appeal, because some people were saying initially, oh, we're going to take away Man City's right to appeal. And it's like, well, no, you can't do that, because then they could dispute your decision, any decision the Premier League make. If you haven't got the right to appeal it, then like, if you haven't got the right to appeal it, then you can appeal the fact that you haven't got the right to appeal. So, yeah, and then everything just collapses after that. So it's one of them where it's like, I said, this is going to rumble on for a long time, and Manchester City will probably try and delay the decision by appealing it. Because if they do get sanctioned, obviously they'll have the right to appeal. They could potentially appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport and get it overturned. So even when decisions are made, it still might not be the end of it, because as I said, City would be able to appeal, and any sanction would be delayed until after the appeal's over. So if the appeal process takes 2 years, then they could do a load more stuff, and then boom, it's done. And it's like what I believe Chelsea have done recently in terms of their January 2023 transfer spend. In that January window, I think they're bracing for a transfer ban, because I think they're like, oh, you know what, yeah, we might be getting punished for this, so let's just do as much as we can before we do. Preemptive strikes. But you know what? Let me know your views on the Manchester City situation. So Manchester City and the financial fair play charges. 115 charges in total. What do you think the punishment should be? Points deductions, fines, expulsion from the Premier League, relegation? It's one of them, or stripping of titles. What should the punishments be? www.pitch-talk.com is the official website. Check us out there. You can listen to the podcast there. YouTube.com/Pitch Talk, @Pitch Talk on Twitter. Tweet with us, follow us, see what we're up to. Facebook.com/Pitch Talk. Become a fan, become a friend, become a member of the group. Join the footballing revolution we're working so hard to create. We are @Pitch Talk on Instagram. Check out there for vlog previews and much more. We're on TikTok, Reddit, @Pitch Talk on both of those platforms. Also, for Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, so many places. Ghana, GAANA, Verbal, VURBL, so many places where you can catch the Pitch Talk podcast. Wherever you pick up your podcast, check us out. You can add our RSS feed to TuneIn Radio, Player FM, among others as well. Want to know your views on Manchester City being charged with 115 breaches of financial fair play over an 8 to 9 year period. What should the sanctions be? Will the sanctions be harsh enough? You know, I have been Straight Shootin LJA, and until next time on the Straight Shootin View, take it easy, peeps.
Join the Pitch Talk revolution.
Check out the official Pitch Talk website.
www.pitch-talk.com. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Pitch Talk.
We are fans of football, dropping vlogs, videos and podcasts on the beautiful game.
Check out our videos on YouTube and Instagram's IGTV,
including special feature segments,
5 minutes with the G,
the Straight Shootin View,
coaching with JBK. We produce, record and edit video content
and audio on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts,
Verbal, Podomatic,
Anchor,
Spotify
and other podcast platforms.
Join the Pitch Talk revolution on Twitter, Instagram,
Facebook
and www.pitch-talk.com.
The pitch is where we eat.
The pitch is where we sleep.
And the pitch is where we talk.
I can see you now.